Now, first off, there's a lot happening with Chanel at the moment with the sudden departure of Virginie Viard, etc. And by the time I get to editing and posting this video, who knows when it'll be. I'm guessing I won't post this, if at all, until after Paris Fashion Week. And again, so much can happen between now and then. And I'm second guessing myself if I will actually post this video just because I don't want to be shooting someone when they're already down. Potentially down. Not that my opinions matter to Chanel in the slightest, but I do think it's ironic that so many people seem to be quote unquote happy about Virginie's departure, saying she played it too safe or she didn't live up to Karl Lagerfeld's innovative legacy, blah, blah, blah. And yet those same people had no problem excessively buying from Chanel the past couple of years. I mean, if she was that bad and boring and predictable, why keep buying her designs? I'm gonna come out and say it. I did not give a flying flip about Chanel until I started this YouTube channel about a year and a half ago. But whatever voodoo magic spell Chanel had me under, it has since worn off, and those old gut feelings are back stronger than ever. Or more accurately, it's the lack of any feeling. And just as a heads up, we're going to leave price and quality out of the discussion today because that horse is dead. That's all we ever talk about these days when it comes to why Chanel is out, why Chanel is giving the ick, etc. Instead, I just want to walk you through the 3 major lies that I had convinced myself about Chanel, and I want to follow those up with why I know deep down that Chanel just isn't for me. Disclaimer time, these are just my opinions on why Chanel is more often than not. I can't say never, but on average, I find most of what is considered to be quintessential Chanel to be unsuitable for me. My lifestyle, my aesthetics, my budget, and of course, I do not mean to offend anyone. This isn't going to be me just pissing on Chanel for the entire video, but I just want to share the highs and lows of my exploration of the brand, and if that resonates with you, then I hope you keep watching. Hello and welcome to A Briefcase of Luxury, a place where we love to chat about all things related to life, learning, and luxury. As a business professor by day and a luxe lover by night, I am personally on a renewed journey of fixing unhealthy mindsets and spending habits, especially when it comes to my weakness. Basically all things luxury and superfluous, like handbags. And if you are on this journey as well, then I hope you will consider subscribing so we don't have to travel this road alone. KW Shops recently-ish made a video about de-influencing Chanel, and it just resonated with me. I'll link it below, but I love how she asked, what is it do you actually like about Chanel? Like, mind-blowing question, right? And it's funny because she's right. Somewhere along the way, I had forgotten altogether what I actually like about Chanel, or really what I didn't like about Chanel, because I had somehow convinced myself that Chanel was objectively worth it. Now, before we get into all that, I just want to share with you a recent bag I picked up. And full disclosure, I bought this more for the novelty of it than for its functionality. But come on, I figured this would be the perfect video to introduce you to this little showstopper since I'm about to go off on why Chanel isn't for me. I get the irony, okay? So this is from a brand called Mary Frances, and this was just one of those spur-of-the-moment rare finds when I was at the Symphony with my parents recently. We were browsing around the gift store before the concert started, and my dad was the one who saw this, and for $200, I just thought it would be such a fitting souvenir for the lovely weekend getaway that we were having. I mean, clearly, this takes after the Chanel Mini reissue in terms of its size and just overall design. Okay, I turned off my lights, and hopefully now you can see some of the details better. Like, we have the same style of the reissue turn lock. I'm going to flip it over to the back. We do have a very generous flap with a magnetic button closure right there. And I also like how the fact that it's not beaded all the way around. Let's go ahead and open her up. We do have a slit compartment in the back, and that's it. In terms of its strap, we do have a chain strap that can be worn crossbody or doubled up as a shoulder strap. So that's what it looks like. There you go. But just look at the beading on this beauty. It's stunning. And considering that I was following several sequined Chanel bags on fashionphile, this definitely not only scratched a secret itch to add more statement bags to my collection, but more than that, it was an extremely meaningful purchase. So I'm just beyond thrilled to have her as a bit of closet art. Again, I've never heard of Mary Frances until I bought this, and I of course had to do some digging, and y'all, she has some of the most stunning embroidered bags I've ever seen. Like literally, they are art on a strap. I will definitely be checking out more of her bags in the future. So the first lie I fell for was that real handbag lovers love Chanel, and thus I wasn't a legit handbag lover if I didn't love or at least appreciate Chanel, which translated to having a healthy number of Chanel handbags in my handbag portfolio. Now, if you go back to the beginning of my channel, I mentioned several times that my wallet on chain back there that I bought from the boutique back in either 2021 or 2022, I bought it for around $2,500, if that helps you narrow down a time frame. But I mentioned that I bought the walk with the intention that it would be my one and done purchase from Chanel. Like, it satisfied the designer handbag enthusiast in me who recognizes that Chanel is without a doubt a formidable presence in the luxury space. And so it only felt right that if you are a handbag lover, then you should own at least one Chanel bag. Looking back, that is piss poor logic. Just because you love handbags does not mean you will or should love all handbags ever made. So do not follow my lead on this one. But over time, I started to create more and more content about Chanel's new releases, about buying Chanel pre-loved, and then I made even more content on price increases, company controversies, their recent CEO interview, and Lord knows what else. So for someone who claimed not to care about Chanel, who had checked the box and said they were done with ever buying any more Chanel, I sure gave the impression that I was in fact not done with Chanel. And yet, being on YouTube and actively consuming luxury content on YouTube, I had somehow convinced myself that one walk did not a true handbag lover make. No, I needed more to feel legitimated. And while I don't consider myself an influencer, hence I don't buy handbags like an influencer would, and I have no aspirations to have a walk-in handbag closet. Like, I have 3 shelves in my closet for bags, and that's it. And yet I had still convinced myself that my collection would not be properly curated without owning at least one Chanel classic flap, to be very specific. Like there's some universal checklist for what bags you need to own to be considered a serious handbag aficionado. Like, that is so silly. And if I were to be honest with myself, even when I bought the walk, it wasn't love at first sight. It was more like a great, they have it in stock, let's just check it off the list. So that was the first lie I fell for. The second lie was that Chanel was a good investment, as in it's okay to buy a handbag you don't 100% love if it's a good financial investment. But we define investment so loosely in this scenario that it's not just about buying a bag that actually yields a return, but we also consider handbags to be good enough investments if they even retain just some of its value. Like, I regret ever describing bags as an investment. Not even as an investment in my wardrobe. I know I've been guilty of saying that, so I just want to go on the record to say that bags are not an investment, financial or otherwise. They are a straight up liability. There are plenty of actual assets out there that will actually offer you a better return, or an actual return for that matter. And I know some people will argue against that, and they'll point to the rising price of the Chanel classic flaps. They'll talk about Hermes bags that appreciate in value the moment they leave the store, etc. I mean, that could be a whole separate video, but let's just not kid ourselves. Handbags, even Chanel handbags, are too volatile to be considered a dependable financial asset, especially in the long run. Even calling them a wardrobe investment is a little silly. It's no different than saying groceries are an investment for my body and my health, or buying gas is an investment for my car. That's just a given. So I'm just gonna take whether I can get any of my money back just out of the equation completely. I'm just going to assume my next handbag is going to be worth $0, nada, the moment I buy it. I'm just not educated enough to game the handbag investment market like a day trader. So if I now realize that the reasons I've been paying any mind to Chanel were because, one, I thought I was missing out as a handbag lover if I didn't own more Chanel, and 2, I thought of Chanel as an investment, and I'm now realizing that neither are true, it's become clear to me once more why I never owned any Chanel, nor did I aspire to until I started this channel. So if not for those two reasons, do I have any real reasons left for buying Chanel? Like if I were to only buy my heck yes bags, the ones that I 100% love, which is a mind-blowing concept, right? Like, does Chanel hit the top of the love spectrum for me? I can't say it truly does based on my final big misconception. The final lie I fell for was that the Chanel aesthetic is the epitome of timelessness. Okay, this isn't so much a lie, but more of a logical fallacy on my end, as in I like a timeless aesthetic. Chanel is considered a timeless aesthetic, therefore I should like Chanel's aesthetic. And I partly chalk this up to me just getting older, but if you haven't already picked up on it, the Chanel Classic Flap, which is Chanel's epitome of timelessness, it hardly makes me swoon. Not when I was younger and not now. In other words, even though I personally like a timeless aesthetic, Chanel's version of a timeless aesthetic was just never one I aspired to. And maybe never is too harsh. It's more like more often than not, I have to really pick through each of their collection to identify one or two things that I'm like, oh, that's not bad. Well, not bad isn't good enough. First and foremost, even as I've gotten older, I'm just not a classy, girly type girl. I wish I was, but that's just not the look I'm comfortable or confident with. And trust me, I've definitely been swayed by some of the recent trends with the tweed jackets and the boucle cardigans and the big gold buttons. And don't even get me started on all of the Goelia sponsored content. Like, no hate to Goelia, they have some beautiful pieces, but they're primarily known for making Chanel inspired clothing, but on a budget, right? So part of me really wants to adopt that classy grandma look. But whenever I put on a tweed jacket or a skirt, I feel like I'm cosplaying Jackie Kennedy, and it just doesn't feel right on me. And on that note, I love when girls talk about their affinity for Chanel and how that was influenced by their moms or their grandmothers. Like when they think of grandma, they can still smell the Chanel number 5 on her. They think of pearls and elegance and class, which is all very romantic sounding. And I love my family, but that ain't how we roll. So it would be disingenuous for me to be like, oh yeah, Chanel, pearls, and tweed, those all remind me of my grandmother. It does not. So on top of that, I don't have a generational connection with the brand. So its concept of timelessness is really quite lost on me. And also younger me actually rebelled quite heavily against this specific aesthetic. Like think Parent Trap and all the other iconic late 90s, early 2000 rom-coms. Yeah, I was very much more your Avril Lavigne type. So no, growing up, Chanel was never the brand I aspired towards. Like I preferred the fun and the funky back when I was young, and now apparently I just prefer the boring. And I've been boring for well over a decade now, way before the so-called quiet luxury trend. Also, I know under Karl Lagerfeld's reign, yes, Chanel did some really cool and edgy things, which I did like. So again, that's why I'm hesitant to be so one-sided, but the iconic Chanel aesthetic, more often than not, just isn't my cup of tea. But for instance, the cap toe shoe, that's an exception to the Chanel aesthetic that I'm very much a huge fan of, because I find that colorway very flattering. It lengthens your legs and it makes your feet look dainty. Not that I have giant clown feet, but I feel like they make my legs look more proportionate and feminine. So yeah, on average, I have to look really hard at Chanel to find things I just kind of like. And I just don't know if that time and effort and money, if that's all worth it just to find something I kind of like. Like I can boil it down to the following statement. I find the Chanel Classic Flap to be too classy and the Chanel 22 to be too trashy. Literally, it's a trash bag. So if the main Chanel aesthetic isn't for me, then it really doesn't help that Chanel hasn't been the most innovative with the majority of their new handbag releases. As in, if I'm not a fan of the Classic Flap, then tough love, babe. Because every bag is more or less a knockoff of the Chanel Classic Flap, besides the trash bag. And I get it, it's iconic to Chanel, right? Which means I'm better off looking through their non-iconic releases. But when I do find something that I like, I can typically find something similar by someone else that either costs less or that I like more. Think of the new Chanel Kelly. That's not called the Kelly, but we call it the Kelly for a reason. So if I were to opt for the Chanel version, it would again just be buying it because it's Chanel. It's a vicious mind game, guys. So in KW Shop's words, there is a very little that I actually like about Chanel, which is surprisingly hard for me to swallow. Let me know what you think of Chanel, but like really, like how much are you naturally drawn to the brand, or how much of your attraction has just been honed by increased exposure to the brand via social media, etc.? Because I'm very much guilty of falling into the second group. Again, I 100% recognize that there are people out there who just resonate with the brand like authentically. This is the brand they feel best represents their style, and they're not cosplaying a fantasy self or trying to be someone they're not. And I think that's always a good thing when we find a brand and immediately feel that connection. But I'd be lying if I said I had that connection with Chanel. Now, does that mean you will never see a Chanel unboxing on my channel? Not necessarily, but it's pretty safe to say you probably won't see a Chanel classic flap unboxing, not even pre-loved, not anytime soon. Maybe one day, 10, 20 years from now, I'll finally be ready for the classy grandma look, and it'll finally feel natural for me. Okay, this was super rambly, and I'm not even sure if my points lined up. Like if this was a written essay, I definitely would not score myself high on coherency or organization. I just hope I didn't come across as too negative. I guess I'm just trying to sort out my own feelings to understand how I want to curate my collection moving forward, and whether Chanel is a brand I want to spend the time researching further. And this was just one of the recent epiphanies I've had about the brand. So anyways, thank you so much for watching and for staying until the end. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so we can be sure to catch up again next time.